please request you to all put your hands together to greet or welcome our panelists. A wonderful morning to all of you. I'm Yogesh Negi from DIT Dehradun. Pleasure to be your host for this opening session of The Valley of Words. Join me in revisiting one of the history's most iconic moments, the Salt March, but from an untold perspective. Imagine walking with Mahatma Gandhi on the path to Dandi, partaking in historic defiance of the Salt Act. He is Tribhuvan, an unsung Agariya salt harvesters from very famous Little Rann of Kutch in Gujarat, who fought alongside Gandhi, yet his story was never recorded. Today, his grandson Azad is in a situation of waging a new battle for salt, not against the colonial powers, but the establishments of independent India that threaten the very existence of theirs. A Touch of Salt, written in Bangla and translated in English by an acclaimed Arunava Sinha, masterfully intertwines the lives of Gandhi, Kasturba, Tribhuvan, and generations of Agariyas, revealing a saga of struggle and survival. This is actually a story of salt and sacrifice. And to bring to this compelling narrative to life, it's my honor to introduce the author of this remarkable work, Anita Agnihotri ma'am. Anita Agnihotri ma'am has been a poet and writer for children even before she joined the Indian Administrative Service in 1980. She has since diversified her writing into several genres, such as short stories, novels, essays, and of course, poetry. After over 40 books and 37 years of public service, she is now a full-time writer, rediscovering India every day. A very warm welcome, ma'am. Our lead discussant for this session is none other than Shri N. Ravi Shanker ji, who combines rich administrative experience with a flair of academics. During his civil service career from 1980 to 2015, he served in the government of Uttar Pradesh, government of Uttarakhand, and government of India too. He now serves as a principal advisor at DIT University. We are very honored to have you with us, sir. And now, to chair this remarkable session, we are privileged to have the incredible Anjum Katyal, ma'am, with us. Currently director of the APJ Kolkata Literary Festival, Anjum Katyal has previously been an editor at Seagull Books, a writer of the book series on theater personalities, and a translator whose most recent work on Mahashweta Devi's Truth, Untruth was awarded the WOW Book Award for Translation 2024. Delighted to have you with us, ma'am. I now invite all our esteemed guests to begin this insightful discussion and to guide the session forward. Thank you. Yes. Please, mics.
Can you all hear us at the back?
No, we have mics.
We are all forceful personalities with loud voices. Welcome. Yeah, there you go. Welcome, everyone. So nice to see you all here on a bright, sunny Dehradun morning. As you can see, I am flanked by very sort of heavyweight personalities. Anita Di on my right is a writer of Bengal, probably now considered Bengal's most senior and veteran writer. And she has been someone whose work I've been following for a very long time. She writes wonderful poetry, children's stories, short fiction, and of course novels. And the wonderful thing about Anita Di is like my other hero, Mahashweta Devi, whose book he just mentioned, one of her books I had translated recently. She is somebody who gets down to the grassroots of life in India across the country. And she talks about people and she talks about events that are very far from the notice of mainstream media. So without people like her, very often these people would not exist in our imagination, because our national mainstream stories very often don't count them in or their struggles. So that's a very big reason to be grateful for a writer like Anita Agnihotri and the legacy she leaves behind. Mr. Ravi Shankar on my left is one of ex-principal secretary, you said, right?
Yes, Chief Secretary.
Chief Secretary, and somebody who has known Anita Di intimately, and I can tell you with empirical evidence, having seen it, that he has studied the book thoroughly, and he's full of very, very important insights. And I'll just encourage him to start, and we can have a conversation later.
Thank you.
You want to take?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Anjum Katyal, and let me welcome my friend, batchmate, Dr. Anita Agnihotri, the author of this book called The Touch of Salt. The Touch of Salt, I am first and foremost asking all of you to read it if you have not read it. It is a story about the salt farmers of a region of India called Kutch. And she has woven it into a story along with the Dandi March, where Mahatma Gandhi ji led almost 80 people to go and defy the Salt Act and pick up salt at Dandi. So the way it has been interwoven is very interesting. The plight of the salt farmers as they live, and one of the salt farmers who accompanies Mahatma Gandhi and his team along that Dandi March. So from that perspective, I would like to start off from asking the author. See, Kutch is an area where you have perennial problem of drinking water. So in the very first, what I would say, chapter of the book called Thirst, waiting for water has made her eternally fearful. This is the salt desert stretching on the horizon. The lives of Malati and Vishnuram, their lives are intrinsically interlinked with the salt farming season on land which is desolate, yellow-brown, black sand and mirage, which is recorded as reserve forest in government records. There is not a single blade of grass, but it is recorded as reserve forest. That's what I want to point out. When a salt farmer dies, his torso burns on the fire, but his legs, a lifetime of salt gathers in the marrow of the legs, in the calves beneath their knees. They burn very well. That's what the author has written. Monsoons convert this black and gold salt flat into an overflowing ocean. So it's like filled with water. The Agariyas, those who live there, have been cultivating salt for hundreds of years. The word agar means salt, and those who cultivate it. An earthquake of 1819 and the legend of Basuki are spoken about. Sign languages as communicated via mirror are common here in Karagoda, the village where they live. Kara means salty and Goda is mound. The British took care of them with basic communities, and the salt march of Gandhiji did not focus on the plight of the salt farmers. I would like to underline that. Did not focus on the plight of the salt farmers, but had a political message of salt of the earth reaching the people of the country without taxation. Post-independence, as per the author, no change in their status. People will die of thirst. British rule was preferable to this. This is a statement made. I would just like to ask the author, can you please elaborate your field visit experience, your research findings, which led you to start this novel with the theme Thirst? Over to you, Anita.
Thank you, Ravi. And Anjum, thank you so much for your most generous introduction. now that Ravi is asking me question, and you know he's the principal advisor of a reputed institution, I'm sure I won't be able to answer everything, though I've written the book. Okay. Now, essentially, what I do for my writing, I won't call it research as per se, because in creative fiction writing, there cannot be anything called research. If you are not propelled by your understanding, your love for the community you are going to write about, it will become a research paper. It will not become a book. Now, whether it has become a book at all, the readers will judge. But from my perspective, I had gone to Gujarat, and I had long been thinking of visiting the Rann of Kutch, where the salt makers stay. And when I went and came in touch with them, I spent time with them, some days with them, I realized what I have tried to capture here. It is the paradox of development. Ravi said, yes, there is no blade of grass in that place, but the sanctuary in that part of little Rann of Kutch was created for a very definite purpose. It is a sanctuary for wild horses, a category of animals which is becoming extinct all over the world. So they are now available only in 2-3 parts of the world. One is this Rann of Kutch. And Government of India obviously did not want to take any chance. So what has happened in the process, the entire 5,000 hectares of that land, which is part marshy land, part what we call desert, and also a reserve forest, got declared a reserve forest. What I felt is there probably could have been some consultation with people, because the Agariyas, the salt makers, have been living there for hundreds of years. They informally say, when you write, apart from written documentation, lot of folk understanding, stories, they all get mixed. They feel they have been there for 400-500 years. So they need water when they come for salt harvesting, cultivation, which is about 8 to 10 months of the year. Now, when they're there, families with children, because children also studied in schools, women, they all need water because they come from the village and live like semi-nomads in that desert. Unfortunately, in a sanctuary, under the Forest Act, you cannot have any construction, you cannot have any digging, you cannot have any lighting of fire. So you cannot have a system where they get drinking water. Drinking water is supplied to them in a tanker. Now, if the tanker comes on time, well and good. But mostly, the officers of public health department who are responsible for water supply, they may forget, and then water doesn't come. I have seen the plight of school children whose schools have been now built like, to give it a nice look. Earlier, they used to study in shanties because you cannot construct a school there. So these are buses. And the buses, they look very pretty. They are designed and decorated with pictures and all for children. But they become very hot in the desert. And these buses are also supplied by water from the tankers. But the days when the tanker doesn't come, the children go completely thirsty. I had gone in one of that kind of days. So then you basically ask the question that, what British had done, they had a pipeline where water is to come direct to the desert, because for them, the Rann was the biggest production center of salt, because British was the other side. They used to get revenue from salt. So the independence came, condition of the people, I would say, not only did not change, what was expected that they will be associated in the process of development. And this did not happen. So that is where the feeling of, I would say, pathos, a feeling of sadness, the story emerged. But then when I later came to the Sabarmati Ashram, the Satyagraha Ashram in Ahmedabad, it struck me that when Gandhi went for the salt march to Dandi, the salt makers did not accompany him, because Gandhi was looking essentially, that was a very important political point at that point of time, and we cannot criticize Gandhi on that account, because Agariyas are the representative of salt producers. And Gandhi was thinking of the generations and millions of Indians who were consumers of salt. If salt is taxed, the price of the most essential thing on their plate goes up. That is what the salt movement, Dandi March was about. So I think for the time being, this is good, Ravi.
Okay, I'll then move to that families which you have of the Patel family, Tribhuvan, Ram Singh and Azad, 3 generations. And their perspective of how salt was mired in commercial exploitation without benefiting the salt farmers. What I would like to know is, have you had the opportunity to discuss this with the development administrators of that area? Because as an administrator yourself, you may have had some ideas, this is how development ought to take or should take place, and perhaps got an insight into the working of them also. I know it's outside the scope of the book, but I, as you said, belong to a university, I would like to push this point.
Anjum, would you like to say something?
No, finish this point.
Let me clarify, because there are academics sitting here, people who teach literature. I have been in the civil service for 37 years, and I have been writing for, let's say, 45 years. I started as a child of 12. But when I write, I'm not from the side of the administration. What my experiences help me is to understand the reality, I would say the development reality faster maybe than an average writer, because I know what is happening. At the same time, there are many injustices, there are many lack of communication, I would say, I see when I go and write. Here I have not, it is not that I have not discussed it, but one thing cannot be questioned. I talk to the forest officers. First of all, the wild asses, who are most important treasures of the sanctuary, they are very well provided with their fodder. Their grass is grown specially for their food. They have got water preserved in concrete tankers. So the wild horses, they get their water whenever they want. But because it is a sanctuary, you cannot have provision of water for human beings in a mechanical means. You know, I'm not here trying to evaluate the needs of, animals and human beings. Both are equally important. All I feel is that a provision could have been done without disturbing the environment for the human inhabitants of Rann of Salt. That is the basic point. I know that it doesn't have an answer. My friends cannot, because we have a stringent act. It is important that it's stringent. But I personally feel that declaring 5,000 hectares of land which doesn't have any tree whatsoever, it was not necessary. Some areas could have been demarcated where limited activities could be pronounced. Today, what has happened in Rann of Kutch because of salt cultivation is a hide-and-seek game. You cannot take out water because the entire place is saline. The sea was there. Now the sea has receded. To make salt, you have to pump out saline water. The moment they run the pump, which is clandestine, the forest guards would come running, saying that you stop it. That water is taken out, kept in, like paddy fields, there are salt fields, water is pumped out there, and there is an arrangement, step arrangement of the paddy field, of the salt fields, so that the salt automatically dries under the sun and becomes harder, becomes thicker. So if you have a situation like this for everyday livelihood, you have to have a hide-and-seek game with the administration. I would say that there are better ways of handling this. This much I would say. Rest, if you read the book, you will realize what I've tried to say.
So far we've had some very interesting insights from the more economic, the development end, the actual economic reality on the ground, very well pointed out. And I loved Anita Di's response that when she's a writer, she's a writer and she's not really wearing her administrative hat. But I would like to just ask you, Anita Di, that when you're faced with a subject matter like this, which is so which is grounded in the things you've seen and understood about administration, about development, about socioeconomic situations, how do you decide to bring in the emotional and the affective and turn it into a work of fiction that people will want to read and want to identify with the characters? What do you do as a writer?
I don't know how Ravi will respond to this because for my batchmates, I have always been a kind of a rebel soul. You know, my journey in the IAS, which is parallel to my journey as an author, it has been a kind of conflict and torment for me. I have always been in doubt which side I belong to. Do I belong to the system, the administration, or do I belong to people? Because people may not trust me completely. They see me with the other side. And when I belong to the administration, I have often been called, when I was working, especially for project displacement, I have often been called anti-development, you know, by my own colleagues. I think this feeling of conflict is very important. It is not that I forget the people and I come back. There are many times, because many of my novels, beginning from my first novel, Mahuldiha Days, which is about a small rural area in northern Odisha, this feeling has pursued, and I have left it open like this, because I cannot solve any problem through literature. Literature is not meant for social action. Literature is not meant for problem solving. But there are people who read the book. There are youngsters who are young teachers, students. There are maybe older, experienced people who read, and they may think of something. See, unless we think, discuss, and put the problems on a platform of discussion, the country cannot be a dynamic country. A country where all the questions have been answered and understood, it is static. So you will understand that. I have been faced with many situations where I have kind of wept when I saw this. I have come back and I have suffered. I have tried in my own way. I have been working with the tribals on hilly areas of southern Odisha. Difficult life. I could see young children who cannot even apply for a scholarship because they don't have internet facility. There is no electricity there at all. And forest areas, you cannot have electricity. Now, I must say, when I shared this with my younger colleagues, they have informally arranged to the divisional forest officer, electrical line to be passed. I mean, I felt a little satisfied, but let me tell you this, that solutions don't come this way. Solutions have to come from the collective action of people, collective understanding that people have about that. This is what has come to the end of this touch of salt. If people think, and by people I mean all community institutions, I mean panchayats, I mean people's groups, I mean women's organization, I mean self-help groups, they should collectively understand the problems of their area, be it a forest, be it a desert, be it a city, and ask that this is where we are stuck, what shall we do? And it is very important that officials like people who are in the administration, who represent the permanent executive, and also the people who are elected to power, they all try to understand and answer the people. So it is not a question of just one election where you go and vote. This process has to be continuous throughout the time one passes one's life, one's livelihood, everything. So this is the way I look at the situation underlying in the country and try to bring it partly in literature with success sometimes and mostly with failures. But let me tell you that having lived my life in the civil service, I've always been in conflict about my real place in the society, whether I'm with people, because this is a lesson which in Mussoorie Academy, where we all will train, National Academy of Administration, we have been told, there is nothing called neutral bureaucracy. Bureaucracy has always to be committed. Committed bureaucracy means bureaucracy which is committed to the interest of the common people. This is where our very esteemed teachers in the academy 40 years back had told us. And I respect what they said.
Thank you, Anita. I think you made the point very clear. Stakeholder participation and multi-dimensional approach is what is needed for development, and which is it.
Did I answer the question right, Anjum?
There is nothing right or wrong. There is a perspective. I think I'd like to leave this thing with the chair's permission open to the
You had
audience
some more
here.
questions written down?
Huh?
You had some more questions?
I'll change the
Okay, change the strategy.
strategy.
Okay. But people who have not read the book may not be able to participate.
No,
That's
there
a
are
problem.
people who, without having read the book, will also be able to question it. We have Professor Sureka Dangwalji here, who is the Vice Chancellor of Doon University. I am sure ma'am has enough of literary come administrative experience. We also have Shri Napal Chalji, former Chief Secretary of Uttarakhand, who also believes in the multi-stakeholder participation, grassroots level participation. We have Shri, I think I saw Shri Kulbhushan Kain here, but I think he may have just moved out. So if anyone among you would like to ask the author, and if any other young reader here would also like to ask the author any question, part of the syllabus or outside the syllabus, both are welcome.
I can see the book will need a second edition after your questions.
A revision. Any questions from the, yes? Nay? Yes?
Yes, I think
We have-
you have some
Yeah.
question.
So you can ask one and then we have one in the front.
Is it working? Yes.
You're going to need a mic for the, yeah.
So good morning, everybody. Good morning. My question is, such a profound human right issue could have been documented through non-fictional account also. But writer chose novel as a medium of storytelling, the story of Agariyas. First of all, why? Wow. Second, how does the novel allow you to delve deeper into the complexities of their lives, ma'am? Please, I mean, I want your take on this. Thank you. Thank you. Of their lives. Yes, ma'am.
I think see, I write in Bengali essentially, and though I have been reading international literature as well, I have been primarily brought up on very important writings in Bengali literature, starting from Rabindranath Tagore, Bibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay, in poetry, Jivananda Das. So, they are all people who tried to understand human lives, and immense complexities of situation of those times when India was not independent have been brought in. So if you look at the literary tradition, this point is clear that the writer is not an activist in that sense, nor is the writer custodian of human, let us say, what is we understand as human good. But a writer must ask, because literature is the most important tool of protest. And you cannot protest unless you ask questions. And the questions are often cannot be answered by us. It has to be picked up by others. And what is your first question? I'm sorry. The first question is...
The novel.
Why did I choose a novel? Yes, obviously, because if I write many genres, poetry is not adequate for narrative like this. I also do write short stories. In fact, many of my short stories, which have been translated into English by Rani Roy and Arunava Sinha, have very important issues of life brought out, very sharp. But this needed a bigger plane, which is much bigger than a short story. And a novel is a right place, I would say. And I did not want to write much, because Gandhi's march to Dandi is a well-documented historical fact. Everybody knows. So the book I have depended upon in writing this, it has shown that the path which Gandhi had taken to Dandi was not exactly what it is normally reported. I found that out. It's slightly different. So the important inclusion I've done in the book is including a salt maker called Tribhuvan Patel, a part of the journey. Tribhuvan Patel was not a part of the journey. Of course, no salt maker was. So because he could travel with Gandhi, initially he went disguised like nobody could, because only limited number of people were allowed, and that too after checking their credentials. He went hiding himself. But his journey is actually insight into a political journey, which is also not so political, also human. So he has seen the entire landscape, the journey through his eyes. And because he has traveled, it is his family, Tribhuvan, his son, and his grandson Azad. These three generations have tried to capture in the novel. So I would say the most important uh, uh, part, I would say the ingredient of a creative writing is the writer's imagination. But the imagination cannot be wild. The imagination has to be sustained by the background if you use history. So I have done precisely that. I've used Dante March, which is a historically recorded fact, but I have put a character who was nowhere there. You will notice there is a part in the book where Gandhi leaves the first salt in Dandi. And there is no photo of Tribhuvan. He actually, in my novel, calls Tribhuvan and says, "You come stand next to me. Let us leave the hold the salt." But that day there was no photographer arranged, which is historically is a fact. So when Tribhuvan went back to the village and he told his villagers that I was standing next to Gandhi when first salt of the march was lifted, nobody believed him. Where is the photo? Actually, Gandhi's first photo was taken after 3 days when a photographer was arranged. But that day, Tribhuvan was not by his side. So history is a very important ingredient, of understanding life, where things fall off, things come in, and it is writer's imagination, which is always to be accountable to people. It gives it the real edge. And obviously, novel has to be the carrier of this because novel gives you the broad enough area and a pace where complexities can be woven and a story can be told at leisure. That is important.
So just to respond to what Anita Di said, I'm keeping a strict eye on time, don't worry. I'm very aware that we have 10 minutes left and that she has a flight to catch. But to pick up on that, she said that writers are not activists. They work through their imagination, and what they also try to do is create an emotional connection between the reader and the reality of what they're writing about. But one more thing to bear in mind is that through this you can also be political. And I think that this book, if you read it carefully, you'll understand the politics. Because the kind of the people she chooses to focus on, the kind of stories that, the reality that is being unfolded for you, her way of analyzing the Dandi March, it's one of the most unusual. She said it's been written about a lot, yes. But what she brings to it is also from a lens. For example, Kasturba's role. What did she do? For example, how were the minute details of the walk worked out? Who was allowed to join? Who was not? Who participated? Where did they stop? Where did they? Which villages did they avoid? So politics is interwoven, if a writer wishes it to be, without affecting the emotional content of the book, right? And we have would you like to say something? We have a question here.
As a reader, I looked at it as a twin narrative. The twin narrative being, one is the well-known salt march, Dandi March, and you go through the whole thing. And a very passive participant being Tribhuvan Patel and his family's travels in the salt marshy area. So I think you have to, and I will recommend it to all the young readers, that the known and the unknown are interwoven. The unknown being the socio-economic conditions of the salt farmers. And I think the element of pathos that is there, that has been brought out very well by the author. That's what I would like to emphasize.
We have a question in the front row. Do they have a mic for the audience?
प्रियंका जी, आपके पास एक माइक था ना?
वो वापस दे दिया था उन्होंने. हाँ, ठीक है. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Ma'am, two questions. One, you brought out this point of displacement of communities from the sanctuary. Now, as an enthusiast in climate change, now conventional wisdom is getting challenged. That says that if you uproot natives away from the land that they belong, it's a very anti-climate thing to do. They are the best, last, probably the wall to protect climate change in the area. So uprooting and converting them into the century that we have been predisposed to the idea is getting challenged world over. And therefore, for you to bring out displacement as a genre, what advice will you give? Because it's a developing genre now in fiction, where displacement of human from the native is becoming a powerful emotion. So I must compliment that you have taken this step knowingly, unknowingly, but this is becoming a genre in fiction. Therefore, to say that the point that ma'am pointed out, politics gets interwoven, and when you are writing in displacement as a genre, you can't say that I'm not an activist, because somewhere this emotion is bound to come, because people will seek hope, people will seek action. It is an underdeveloped genre, but it is an important genre, especially in the context of climate change. Your comments.
Very important question, yours. No, I would say that this particular story, here the people are not excluded, but people have been, they're back to the wall. But I believe this because I have worked for years in displacement by projects. In fact, I have recently finished, not connected with my work, a large novel on Narmada movement, where grassroots level people had worked in order to first defend the stoppage of Narmada construction and then for rehabilitation. Because when Narmada could not be stopped, they wanted their rehabilitation. This just come out recently. Now, it has been proven that communities preserve the nature best everywhere. I have traveled in Bastar, I have traveled in Chhattisgarh, traveled in Madhya Pradesh, everywhere I've seen this. If you leave a tribal in a forest, the forest is safe. This is true of all the forests I have been to. But initially, but if I may say so, and I hope the forest officers, if any present here, may not mind, that our understanding of the forest has always been of the British kind, where forest has resources have to be maximized, and people hinder the management of resources. So this theory has been proven not correct anymore. And one attempt of giving some entry to people was this act of, where 2006 Act, where what's the full name, where the forest dwellers and traditional dwellers were allowed the right to have their individual rights and community rights, Forest Rights Act. So which has been partial, it has kind of gone into oblivion now, but it has been partially implemented well for individual rights all over India, and particularly in a district of Maharashtra called Gadchiroli, even community rights have been given to the Gonds. It has really worked well. But question is that we also need some kind of a national push to keep up this kind of initiatives going. You have to respect the people who were our original children of the soil and their association with the forest, with nature. This has to be preserved. I have been trying to write about this. If you read my other books, you will see, as much as possible. But I'm sure many more important people in other languages as well, in Indian languages, are writing about this. We have to understand that even in preservation of nature and natural resources, human beings play a role. And they are much better in protecting forests than the commercial interests. So this is a very important point.
So we have 3 minutes left. Is there another question, or shall we ask for some closing remarks?
I think we can close it.
One more, last. No students have asked anything.
They have poor children. They have not read the book also.
No, but you have the opportunity to ask Anita the something.
No, you can make some closing comments.
Would you like to say something?
No, I think.
Anjum, you can give, you are a chair, you can give a closing comment in
So my closing comment would be that if you can pick up this book, as you can see, it's not a very long or thick tome, but it is dense. It covers a lot of ground, and it's very readable. When I started reading it, I couldn't believe that a subject like this would be so interesting. It makes you want to know what happens.
It is like an English book, actually. Credit to the translator, Arunava Sinha.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you for such a wonderful and insightful session. It has truly been a pleasure to listen and learn about this deeply touching human rights concern from our esteemed panelist today. I would now like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each of our distinguished guests for their valuable contributions. I also invite Team WOW to kindly come forward and felicitate our panelists. Lastly, but a quick reminder, the book, A Touch of Salt, is available at Natraj stall. So please do not miss the chance to get your copy and get it signed from the authors themselves. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. If anyone wants to purchase this book, A Touch of Salt, they can kindly contact Natraj. The salesman is sitting at the backside.